This episode is brought to you by Espolón Tequila. Slow, sticky, snoozy. They call these the dog days of summer. But Espolón? They don't do boring. Welcome to the Marg Days. Espolón Tequila. 100% blue Weber agave, born to shake up your summer. Just add lime, agave, and a little attitude. Visit espolontequila.com. Espolón Tequila, 40% alcohol, volume 80 proof. Copyright 2025 Campari America, New York, New York. Drink responsibly.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive, a leader in boat insurance. Welcome aboard to Carefree Boating. Here, we don't worry about the what-ifs, because we explore with Progressive Boat Insurance for as little as $100 per year for a basic liability policy. Progressive also offers a variety of other coverages and can help you cover repair costs when you need it. And with discounts like multi-policy, safety courses, responsible driver, and more, your mind can really float free. Cruise on over to Progressive.com to get a quote today and see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Rate and discounts not available in all states or situations.
This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
The Premier League kicks off in just 12 days' time, and drafts are happening left, right and centre all over the world. But who are the players we might be tempted to bring into our side who could turn out to be major minutes risks? Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL. I'm Dom Crofts. I hope you are well. And today, we're going to be taking a look at those players who you may well be tempted to draft early on draft night, but who may come back to haunt you because they're at risk of sharing minutes with a teammate. Oh dear. Before we get into it, please don't forget to subscribe to this pod if you haven't already. It is the best way to make sure you never miss an episode. It would also be amazing if you could give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or leave a nice comment on Spotify saying how brilliant we are, because that will really help with the algorithm, and apparently the algorithm is important. So whatever podcast platform you listen to us on, if you could leave some positive words of encouragement, a little bit of love, and a 5-star review, that would be great. You can also follow us on social media if that is your thing. You can find us on X and on Instagram at FPL Draft Zone. We are also on Blue Sky, where our handle is at FPLDraftZone.bsky.social. Before we get going, we should also start by flagging the big elephant in the room, which are the problems that everyone is having with FPL Draft at the moment. I've not tried to use the app yet, I'm more of a desktop guy, but I've been told it is pretty much unworkable when it comes to mock drafts and draft nights. And to be honest, the desktop version is not much better either. A lot of managers have been frozen out of drafts. Some have not been allowed to pick the player they wanted to pick, and the timer has just counted out and selected whoever was top of their watch list. And there's also a weird glitch where 3 goalkeepers can be drafted by any one team, but one of them has to be David Raya. It is massively annoying. It is a major problem, but I know that the people at FPL are working hard to sort it out. They're aware of all these issues, and they are trying to sort it out. But in case they can't, you really need to have organised your watch list this year to perfection to avoid any issues when it comes to your draft, because otherwise you are going to end up with half a squad of players that you never wanted in the first place. But fingers crossed, it will get sorted before your draft night and everything will run smoothly. But enough about that. It is time to wave the red flag and sound out warnings for players who may not be the regular starters you hope they're going to be this season. We're going to go through a select number of teams, and we're going to highlight those areas that are still very much up for grabs in terms of their respective starting 11s. And we're going to try to work out if and where you should draft some of these assets given the risk that comes with them. So let's start with Arsenal, who have now got a lot of squad depth this season following their signings. Great for them, of course, but not so great for draft managers hoping to bring in some of their assets. At the back, Jurrien Timber has yet to make an appearance in pre-season after he had ankle surgery in late May. He was, of course, a first-team regular and brilliant last year for Arsenal at right back, and it was just as well that he was, because Ben White was unavailable for almost the entire campaign. But now Ben White is back and he is showing signs of his old form. He's linking up well with Saka, he's linking up well with Odegaard, and Timber's return is expected to be imminent as well. And that means there is trouble afoot for draft managers because Mikel Arteta loves both of these players. And while I would expect White to start the season due to the fact that he has had a full preseason under his belt, I think they will both be sharing minutes this season, and therefore they both become a bit of a gamble when it comes to draft. Now, obviously, Arsenal's defence is elite. They have had the best defence in the Premier League for the last couple of seasons now, and it makes perfect sense to want to bring in at least one of their defenders into your side. But if you're looking for a regular guaranteed starter this season, you're better off looking at their centre-backs than their fullbacks. Gabriel and Saliba are going to be week in, week out starters when they are fit. And while Gabriel is likely to miss the start of the season because he's not featured in pre-season either, he is probably the preferred pick of the two long term. Miles Lewis-Skelly is another option, but of course Jurrien Timber can also play at left back, and it also remains to be seen if Lewis-Skelly will share minutes with Riccardo Calafiori. Although having said that, the Italian has had a bit of an injury-cursed start to his Arsenal career. Overall, I would fancy MLS to get more minutes than White and Timber. And of course, the other option, if you don't target a Gabriel and you don't target a Saliba and you don't want to get involved in the rotation risk at fullback, is to go for David Raya in your draft. So you have that clean sheet potential from Arsenal and a guaranteed starter. But obviously, you do not have the goal-scoring threat that someone like a Gabriel would give you. So at the back, approach Ben White and Jurrien Timber with a little bit of caution this season. And if you do decide to go there, you may just have to accept that some weeks one plays and some weeks the other does. On to Arsenal's midfield and attack. And we're going to do this together because there is one player who is capable of playing in both areas, and that is Kai Havertz. Now, last season, if he had stayed fit, Kai Havertz would have been playing as Arsenal's central striker more often than not. And even though people have questioned whether he should be Arsenal's starting centre-forward, statistically, he has done nothing to suggest that he shouldn't be. In his first season at Arsenal, he ended up with 13 goals and 10 assists from 2,627 minutes. And that works out at the equivalent of 23 attacking returns in around 29 games, or an attacking return every 0.79 matches. And last season was pretty good as well when he was fit. He ended up with 9 goals and 3 assists in the equivalent of 20.8 games. So that is 12 attacking returns in 20-odd games, or an attacking return every 0.58 matches. So pretty good, right? And you could definitely argue he is deserving of a place in Arsenal's starting 11 based on those returns. However, this season, Arsenal have invested in their midfield and they have invested in their attack, and that means that Havertz's minutes could well be reduced. Now, I am sure he will play games as Arsenal's starting striker. I suspect he will start at Old Trafford in game week 1. But if you draft him into your side as one of your starting centre-forwards, there are definitely going to be weeks where he does not play. And there are definitely going to be some weeks where he is utilised elsewhere, maybe as a left 8 in midfield. So Kai Havertz is a very tricky player to evaluate this season because you don't know where he's going to play or how often he is going to play. And if Victor Gyökeres hits the ground running, you would have to assume that Kai Havertz will be the biggest victim of his success. You look at that Arsenal midfield, and Odegaard, Rice and Zubimendi will be their first choice starters most weeks. And that means that for Kai Havertz, there is a bit of a problem. Another question mark at Arsenal is what happens on that left-hand side. Gabriel Martinelli has, of course, long been thought of as their first choice starting left winger, and it's probably still his shirt to lose at the moment. But Leo Trossard actually played more games than any other Arsenal attacker last season. His output has been significantly better than Martinelli's since he joined the club. He has been linked with a move away from Arsenal, but if he does stay, there is going to be some serious competition between those two. And that is before you take into account the new signing of Noni Madueke, who most people assume has been brought in as competition or more of a backup really for Bukayo Saka, but who may well get opportunities on the left as well. There's a lot of comps going around on social media of the performance he put in against Everton for Chelsea playing on the left-hand side. So all of a sudden that is 3 options on Arsenal's left-hand side, and that is before you consider the possible signing of Eberechi Eze, who is strongly being linked with a move to Arsenal and who can also play on that side. So if you're thinking of drafting an Arsenal winger, or indeed if you're thinking of drafting Eberechi Eze, then you're going to have to accept that they all come with an awful lot of risk when it comes to guaranteed starts and guaranteed minutes. Brighton also have some areas where there is a fair bit of competitive depth. At right back, you're looking at Kadioglu, Hinshelwood, Lamptey and Vifa as potential options, and Kadioglu can also play as a left back as well, which muddies things even more. And given the money he cost and the reputation he arrived with, he's surely going to become a first team regular if he can stay fit. The question mark, of course, is where and when. Hinshelwood is another player who will expect to play plenty of minutes this season. So where does that leave Lamptey and where does it leave Vifa? Lamptey played pretty well when he got the chance last year. And even up front there are question marks for Brighton because we've seen Rutter playing as the central striker in pre-season as well as Danny Welbeck. Now, of course, Welbeck was excellent last year. 10 goals, 5 assists, the regular starting striker. But he turns 35 in November. And when you're in your mid-30s, the chances are your form and your fitness is going to drop off sooner rather than later. So even though he will be high on many managers' lists as a second or third striker option, he is likely to be a minutes risk this season due to his age. And when you factor that in, it almost makes Rutter a more appealing option as a draft asset, aside from the fact that forwards are so hard to come by in the game. At Chelsea, Jarrell Hato has signed from Ajax to provide competition at left-back for Marc Cucurella. After a slow start to his Chelsea career, Cucurella has become a bit of a fan's favourite in the last 12 to 18 months, but Hato's profile is slightly different to Cucurella's. He plays in a more similar style to someone like a Miles Lewis-Skelly than Cucurella, and he is another player who is joining for big money and surely has not joined just to sit on the bench. So he will expect some minutes, he will get minutes, and that could impact the value of Cucurella. Now, obviously, I'm not saying don't draft Cucurella, I'm just saying be aware of the risk that he comes with. He's also played an awful lot of football over the last couple of seasons. A full season at Chelsea followed by the Euros, which Spain went all the way in and won, and then another full season followed by the Club World Cup. So he is going to need a rest at some point or he will break down and miss significant minutes. The striker position at Chelsea is another that could well see minutes shared. João Pedro was incredible when he joined and made his impact at the Club World Cup, and he may well have done enough to earn the start on the opening day ahead of another new signing, Liam Delap. But Delap actually looked really good during his cameos as well in that competition, and he could easily have got a couple of goals after coming off the bench in that final against Paris Saint-Germain. Last season, Delap actually outscored Pedro. He got 12 goals compared to Pedro's 10. Pedro had more attacking returns overall though, and Delap had more FPL points. So you would imagine that these two will both get a lot of minutes. The trick is going to be predicting who gets the minutes and when. Both of them can also play in other positions. Pedro can play as a 10 or he can play on the wings. Delap also had a stint on the wings when he was at Hull before he joined Ipswich. So I would expect both of them to get a lot of game time and quite possibly in different roles for different matches. But again, if you draft them, you can expect disappointment some weeks just because the competition for places is so fierce. And that's before we even talk about Nicholas Jackson, who is expected to leave, but imagine if he stays. It's a similar story on those flanks because there are just loads of options for Chelsea. As well as Pedro and Delap, you have Neto, Esteval Villian, Cole Palmer and Jamie Gittins, and at least one of them is going to miss out every single week. It will not, of course, be Cole Palmer. Neto probably has the shirt going into the start of the season, but Gittins would not have signed without some guarantee of minutes, and Willian is widely regarded as one of the best young players in the world. So all of them represent a minutes risk. over the course of the season, and it may well be a case of committing to those players you think are going to start the season and then trying to pivot ahead of your rival managers at the first sign of change. And of course, the additional problem we face as draft managers with Chelsea is that because of what happened at the Club World Cup and the fact that they went all the way, they have yet to play a pre-season friendly so far. So any clues as to how Maresca is going to use these players, any clue as to his thinking, it's all being hidden from us at the moment. There are also some question marks at fullback for the champions, Liverpool, who have spent big on Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez. However, Connor Bradley and Andy Robertson are still at the club as well. Frimpong and Bradley have actually played together in pre-season at times, with Frimpong playing as a right winger. And while I think Frimpong will win this battle for that fullback role in the end, there are questions over who will get the nod in those opening weeks of the season and whether there will be a good amount of rotation. It may be that Bradley starts the games against the more difficult opponents and Frimpong is used to help break down low block teams who sit in. But having said that, I think if you ask Liverpool fans right now, they've definitely been impressed by Frimpong. There is probably less doubt over who the starting left-back will be, but if Andy Robertson does stick around at Anfield, he will be demanding a decent amount of minutes during the course of the season, and that could well see Kerkez rested for some of the more straightforward games, particularly those sort of games in and around the UEFA Champions League. At Manchester City, the goalkeeping situation is murky at best. Ederson is still at the club, despite rumours of a move to Turkey. James Trafford has re-signed for the club from Burnley, and because of their Club World Cup commitments, we haven't seen them play in a pre-season friendly either, so it's impossible to know what Pep is thinking. The safest bet, if you want to focus in on a Manchester City goalkeeper, is to try and get them both and to commit to it for the season, because while I would lean towards Ederson getting the nod at the start of the season, it would not be surprising in the slightest if Trafford finished the campaign as their first choice keeper. The City midfield also throws up a lot of question marks, with Foden, Doku, Savinho, Cherki and Marmoush all looking to get regular starts. Marmoush enjoyed most of his early success at City playing as a striker, but with Haaland now fit and available, he is going to have to make do with a place on the wing, you would expect, unless City change their system, which is not impossible. I would back Marmoush over any of the other names I've mentioned to become a regular starter, and then all the rest sort of feel like major rotation risks. You've got Foden, whose previous form for City means that if he can find his way back to it, he should end up playing regularly. Cherki's form last season was what tempted City to bring him in, and if he can replicate that in Manchester, he'll surely become a regular starter. But any of those names right now are risky picks on draft night, because I think they're all going to share a lot of minutes over the course of the season, and that will of course mean there will be a lot of games where they will barely feature at all. At Spurs, you have a load of options on the flanks as well, even with Heung-min Son leaving the club. You would expect Kudus to become a regular starter, but then you have the likes of Brennan Johnson, Odegaard, Tell and Kulusevski when he's fit, all looking to get starts. Thomas Frank has been a long-term admirer of Johnson for some time now, but is he capable of becoming a competent left-sided option if Kudus has the right-hand side locked down? I'm not so sure. The same question has to be asked of Kulusevski when he does get fit. He prefers the right-hand side as well, but it's going to be tricky for him to displace Kudus. And then there's the likes of Odegaard and Tell, who seem the more natural options for the left, but arguably offer less attacking output. Last season, Johnson and Kulusevski got 28 attacking returns between them, and I am sure that Thomas Frank will not want to ignore that sort of firepower and stick it on his bench. Against Arsenal in Hong Kong, it was Kudus on the right and Odegaard on the left. I think Johnson may get the nod for the game against Burnley on the opening weekend. He scored against Newcastle this weekend in another friendly, but the fact that there are so many options, and Frank has said this himself, means that drafting any of them does come with a bit of risk, and that's before you even consider the possibility that Spurs may actually sign a Son replacement. There's also a bit of risk at the back for Tottenham, with Jed Spence and Destiny Udogie fighting it out at left back. Udogie was flavour of the month when he first came into the Spurs side, but then he got injured and Spence really impressed, and now Udogie is injured again, so it does feel at the moment it is Spence's shirt to lose. He did very well against Bukayo Saka in that friendly against Arsenal as well. But of course, these are two players of a very similar quality. And when that happens, you would expect minutes to be shared between them. And then at Sunderland, the striking situation is pretty complicated as well, with Mayenda Isidore and now Mark Guéhiou also joining the Black Cats. Isidore got 12 goals in the Championship last season, Mayenda got 8 goals and 5 assists, and now Guéhiou has come in from Chelsea, having joined them from Barcelona. He got limited minutes at Stamford Bridge himself last season, but he did get some chances in the Conference League, and he did well. He got 6 goals in 7 games. So who starts on a regular basis up front for Sunderland is a big old question. I would expect Guéhiou to start on the bench, but if he then comes off the bench and takes his chance, he could easily end up as their first choice forward going forward. And also, would he have signed if he wasn't guaranteed a certain amount of minutes? So those are a few players who may appear on paper to be excellent draft assets, but when you scratch the surface, they do carry quite a lot of risk, which is something to consider before your draft night. Let us know if we've missed any other risky picks. You can, of course, get in touch with us on X and Instagram at FPL Draft Zone, or on Blue Sky at fpldraftzone.bsky.social. And of course, we lurk in the shadows of Reddit, so watch out for our posts on there as well. But that is it for today's show. We will, of course, be back very soon indeed. And until next time, it is bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.